What's going on, guys? It's the Infinity Blerd, your friendly neighborhood nerd and movie buff. Currently available on most major podcast platforms and YouTube. It's time to talk about the first movie of the DC Cinematic Universe, currently on HBO Max, Man of Steel, a cult classic. Some of you love it, some of you hate it. Directed by Zack Snyder. Some of you love him. Oh, all right. And some of you hate him. Here's a brief history about Superman, the comic book, and his journey on the big screen. It was created in 1933 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and if you would believe it, nobody wanted it. Shaking my head. They tried to shop it around for years until in 1938 they managed to sell it to Detective Comics, which would later be shortened to DC Comics. And the rest was history. First appearance of Superman was in Action Comics #1, premiering in June of that year. They worked for DC back then for about $10 a page, which kind of came out to about $15 a week back then. And with inflation would have been about $149 to $224 now, which is pennies to the dollar on what it's worth, man. It's $1 billion franchise right now. Shaking my head. When the creators realized how badly they were getting played, they sued DC and received some money, but not nearly the amount that they deserve. And they would be dropped by DC, fired, shaking my head. And they would become damn near poor and destitute. And they would be in court battles with DC for decades. It got to the point when even when they passed away, the estates were still in battles with DC. In 1975, they announced that they were going to make a live-action Superman movie directed by Richard Donner and starring the legendary Christopher O.G. Reeves. But Jerry Siegel condemned the movie publicly, and so to avoid the bad press, they gave them a stipend of $20,000, which later rose over the years. May they rest in peace. Shuster died in 92 and Siegel died in 96, but the legal battles between their heirs and their estates would carry on well into 2013. In between that time, we had quite a few live-action iterations of the Man of Steel. The first one was actually in 1948, which I didn't even know about, to be honest. It was a Superman and Adam versus Superman, starring Alan Kirk. Let me know if anybody actually watched it. In 1951, George Reeves played Superman in Superman versus a Moment, and later that would turn into a show that went on from 1952 to 1958. And Ben Affleck would actually play George Reeves in a movie called Hollywoodland about his tragic murder, also starring Diana Lane. And what's crazy is that he would become Batfleck. That's awkward. That was his Martha? Whoops. In 1978, we had the legendary Superman directed by Richard Donner, and we had Superman #2 in 1980. Legendary movies. Corny, but legendary. And still entertaining to this day. I don't know what happened after that, because we got 2 other movies and they were quite whack. Third one came out in 1983 and the fourth one came out in 1987. Superman 3, they turned Superman into an alcoholic. I don't know, it had a lot of Richard Pryor running around doing crazy stuff. No disrespect to his legendariness as a comedian, but he just didn't work in the film. And then the fourth one had Nuclear Man, and you gotta watch them. They're ridiculous. In 1988, we had a Superboy show, which ended in 92. It had 2 stars. John Himes Newton, and later on he would be replaced by Gerard Christopher. I watched the episode here and there. It was all right. Now, a version that was near and dear to my heart went on from 93 to 97, and it was The Adventures of Lois and Clark. And Clark was played by Dean Cain. That's the first iteration of Superman I remember seeing on TV. I enjoyed the show. I mean, I haven't watched it recently, so I don't know how much it holds up, but at the time it was pretty entertaining. And you had fine Terry Hatcher. Now, before we move on, I have a bone to pick with DC. I was rewatching the 75th anniversary short where they had all the iterations of Superman, you know, from Christopher Reeves to the cartoon and stuff. And from recent times, you had Henry Cavill. And you mean to tell me that you're going to leave out my man's Dean Cain? You even had a Smallville reference and you leave out my boy Dean Cain? What's with that, DC? What's with that? Let me know. That is foul. They also didn't bring him back on Crisis on Infinite Earth special on the DCCW universe world-ending mega special and stuff. It's like, yo, how you bring back everybody else? Tom Welling came back too. Yo, why aren't you giving Dean Cain any respect? What's crazy is that he was casted in Supergirl as Supergirl's father. So it's not like they didn't have his number. Come on, man. Shaking my head. So with the success of the Tim Burton Batman movies, the producers wanted to make a Superman movie starring Nicolas Cage, as Superman, and Christopher Walken as Brainiac. Don't ask. And there was 3 rules that they had in order for the film to be made. They had Kevin Smith write the first script. So they were like, yo, Kevin Smith, we have 3 rules. All right, rule number 1, Superman can't fly. So, I mean, my question would have been like, so what, is he taking the bus? What's going on here? What's the deal? Okay. Rule number 2, Superman couldn't wear the Superman suit. So I guess he was fighting crime in an alligator polo tee or something, or in a wife beater. I don't know. That's ridiculous. And rule number 3 is, since the producer loved giant spiders, he had to fight a giant Thanagarian snare beast. Man, shut the front door. That stuff is crazy. And so the movie fell through for obvious reasons, and the budget ended up going to Wild Wild West. Yo, go rewatch the movie. Wasn't it Wild Wild West? A giant mechanical spider. Yo, you think I'm making it up? Look it up. There's a dope documentary called The Death of Superman Lives, and it has interviews from Tim Burton, Kevin Smith. It's probably one of the best documentaries I've ever seen about how not to make a movie. Another show that's near and dear to my heart that lasted for about 10 seasons is Smallville. Somebody save me. Yeah, that show had a solid, I would say, 4 to 5 seasons, and then it kind of went downhill after that. Man, another bone I have to pick with CW. You mean to tell me Homeboy rolls up back in the Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis special, whatever it's called, and Tom Welling comes back. So, mind you, this is what I'm most hyped about. Tom Welling, he essentially started this whole CW, not whack DC show thing, and you mean to tell me he shows up and he's Superman, but he gave up his powers and he doesn't really have them anymore, and dude just rolls up in plaid and has a conversation with Lex Luthor. That's it. That's all he does. Man, that's whack. I understand that. I think Tom Welling agreed the only way he would come back to the show is if he wasn't actually Superman. But at that point, you might as well not show up, dude. Like, stay home, man. Stay home. In 2006, we got the movie Superman Returns, which is supposed to be a sequel of the Christopher Reeves universe, starring Brendan Ruth and Kevin Spacey. So since we didn't really have a Superman that was contemporary, Warner Brothers decided to round up the cavalry from the Christopher Nolan universe. So that includes Christopher Nolan, who produced this film, David S. Goyer, who wrote the films, and Hans Zimmer, the legendary composer, Uncle Hans. So they would reunite to do Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder. So I'm going to have to talk about Zack Snyder because he's quite the polarizing director. I notice people either love or hate his decisions. I haven't met one person who was just like, Zack Snyder, he's alright. They're either like, yo, he's awesome, bro. I freaking hate him. His movies are shit. So Zack's first major motion picture was Dawn of the Dead, but he would go on to direct comic book movies such as 300 and Watchmen. So he seemed like a natural decision to direct another comic book adaptation, Man of Steel, even though some of you guys would disagree. Some of the hate that happened with Zack Snyder, especially among moviegoers that are comic book fans, is probably when he decided to do Watchmen, which was originally written by Alan Moore and the art was done by Dave Gibbons. Since Moore was completely against any adaptation, and he also had a lot of problems with the comic book industry and them trying to prevent him from showing his vision and trying to play him for royalties and stuff like that. It's another really foul story if you investigate it. So he was completely against it. Go look at a Watchmen poster or right now. If you look, it just says creator Dave Gibbons. His name is left out for a reason. So I think a lot of people took his side over Zack Snyder's, and also Zack Snyder did change the ending of the Watchmen, and I also think a lot of people have problems with that. And his movies are quite long, and he always has director's cuts, so they went on. I think Watchmen it was like 3 hours, and the director's cut's even longer, and some people aren't about that. I think it's different now because we're in the world of binge watching and watching 10 hours of shows now, so I don't think that's an issue right now, but back then people definitely weren't about it. I also think some people just don't like Snyder because when it comes down to it, like all things, it's just a matter of personal taste. You're just never going to get people on board. You'd think everybody on the planet likes the Avengers, but I know people who are like, Avengers was trash. So if you like what you're hearing so far, please click the subscribe, click the like button, and we're about to get into the nitty gritty. So when I first heard this movie was coming out, I was kind of disappointed because I thought it was going to be another reboot, remake, and I didn't want them to revisit the whole Zod thing because we already saw it. And I wanted to see Superman finally fight Brainiac and or a different version of Lex Luthor. But they wanted to go with Zod again, so I was a little skeptical, but the trailers kind of sold me. It wasn't just the suit and the look of the movie, but what I like is that it seemed like they were finally going to show an in-depth version of Krypton. As legendary as Marlon Brando was, I mean, it looked ridiculous even back then what they were trying to do with Krypton. Still classic movie. I'm not trying to shit on your dreams or anything like that, but I just wasn't feeling how Krypton looked back then. So as classic as Richard Donner movies were, they felt like they were based off of magic than in science. The physics were buck wild in that movie. Nothing made sense. So I thought it would be so knowing that Christopher Nolan was going to be behind it, he would ground it in some type of reality and do something interesting with it, a fresh take. So there are a few iterations on Krypton getting destroyed. Normally the one you would see is that Krypton its solar system is around a red sun, and the red sun is getting ready to explode. I thought this was a fresh take and a cautionary tale on how we should treat our planet, because all the greedy elders were trying to steal resources from the core of the planet, and the planet was like, word, all right, I'm gonna explode, watch what happens and stuff. So Jor-El was played by Russell Crowe, and those were some big shoes to fill, man. Last person to play him was Marlon Brando. What? One of the best actors of our time. What? That's crazy. I think he did a good job. They decided to cast Maximus Decimus Meridius. Oh yeah, and he killed it, man. He killed it. Zod was played by Michael Shannon. I remember first seeing him on Boardwalk Empire, and he played a creepy FBI agent. So when I found out he was gonna play Zod, it clicked. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna kill that role, and he's had quite the illustrious career since then. Man, that first fight scene between Zod and Jor-El was mad ill, yo. What? Yo. Jor-El whooped Zod's ass with surgical precision. Boom, 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 pew, pew, pew. Yo, and gave him some gnarly ass scar as if he didn't look evil enough. Crazy fight. Jor-El also summoned this dope ass animal called Raka. Just summoned him. Just, yo, rode up on him. Yo, that scene when he was looking at all the carnage and stuff. Yo, crazy. Zod was a straight savage. Dude first rolls up, literally guns blazing, pew pew, just yo, frick-zing elders and whatnot. Lara L was played by Ayelet Zarir. She didn't really have a lot of scenes, but the scenes she did have were impactful, and she gave birth to
Kal, son of El.
Let's go! So before Kal-El was sent to Earth, Jor-El actually put the codex inside Kal-El, and the codex would actually had the genetic code for all the Kryptonians, and he put it in Kal-El. So it really made him the last savior and the last hope for Krypton. And that felt a little like too literal and a little too convenient. It was an interesting idea, and it gave another reason for Zod to come after Kal-El, but it was a little too convenient and unnecessary. So the tech was very different in this movie. I think that also might be a point of contention among the people who like the film and they don't, because we were so used to seeing the crystals, and they decided to do a lot of like repurposing. Like if you see like some of the weapons are made from recycled materials, since they're like scavengers and go on different planets to take what they have, they would take like bones or something, they fashion them into weapons and stuff like that. I did like that Jor-El's AI wasn't that dope ass flash drive that I'm trying to cop right now on Etsy, but it's too expensive. So it's also the same story that we're kind of used to seeing. Zod is arrested for his crimes and is sent to the quote unquote Phantom Zone, which is a little different in this universe. It doesn't feel like it's another dimension per se, but it's just like they create a wormhole and just put him in another section of space. I mean, I guess it could be another dimension, but it just seems like they put him in like another area that he's isolated in space and stuff. Yeah, him and the posse, they all got cryogenically frozen. And am I bugging out, or did those pods look like dicks? I like the sequence of events that led up to Krypton being destroyed, because I felt like there were more stakes, there was more weight to people's decisions, more gravitas, and I cared more about what would happen afterwards, as opposed to in the Richard Donner movies. As cool as it was, I just couldn't really take it seriously, and I'll be very honest, I just kind of wanted them to get to like all the Superman parts. But in this one, I actually cared about Jor-El and Zod just as much as I did about Kal-El, or Man of Steel. And that takes us to our leading man, Henry Cavill, who plays Clark Kent, Kal-El, Superman. He was dope. And I think regardless of what you think about the movie, it seems that the consensus is that he's a decent Superman. I mean, he has his moments, I think the occasional moments where he might be a little wooden in his acting, but I like it for the most part. Yeah, he used to be in The Tudors, and he also was in this dope movie called The Immortals, if you like a Greek mythology. I knew he'd be right for the role of Superman. There's this one part, what? Somebody tries to disrespect his mother. He is not taking it. Some guard goes up to him, and it's like,
this bastard and his whore mother.
Yo, he whoops ass. It is crazy. So I knew he could do the action, but I knew he could do the I don't play type of role, so I just knew that it would probably work because Superman, is a mother's boy and will do whatever he can to defend his mom. What I also like about Henry Cavill is forget his whack ass muscles. Anybody get whack ass muscles like that? Yeah, I said it. No, I'm just playing. But he's a nerd just like some of us. He likes to play games. He likes to build his own PC. Almost broke the internet building his own PC and showing it off in a wife beater. That's dumb. And then he's such a gamer that he missed the casting call, like the call to say that, oh hey, you're Superman, because he was too busy playing World of Warcraft. And on top of that, he plays Geralt in Witcher, and he actually like read the books and played the video games beforehand, which he didn't have to. He knew about it before like there was even talks about a Witcher show. So which goes to show that he's genuinely a nerd. And not to say that somebody who's not a nerd can't understand the material, but they understand the weight of the role, and they might be a little more passionate about the role too. Like, as much as I wouldn't want Nicolas Cage to play Superman in that movie, he would have done his best, and that's all anybody could ask for, because dude is a crazy comic book fan too, named his son Cavail, all this crazy type of stuff. But I digress. Thing is, yeah, when nerds like to play these roles, it's always a plus. All right, back to the movie. If you're still with me, click the subscribe and the like button. So when we see adult Clark for the first time, he's currently going on a pilgrimage, and we later find out that it's because he's trying to figure out where he came from. The oil rig scene happens. Dude literally rolls up on fire, son. Dude is on fire. What? That's crazy. Yeah, he got muscles, whatever. He's kind of diesel, man. Give me 10, 15 years. I'll get there. One of the first complaints I heard from people on the internet is people were really complaining that he had hair on his chest. People were like, Superman does not have hair on his chest. You hairless moles need to stop, son. First of all, read a comic. There's mad iterations where he has hair. And even if he didn't have hair in the comic book, how does this affect the plot in any way, shape, or form, man? Man, shaking my head. So after the oil rig explosion, Superman is kind of floating in the water like Jesus. And you might wonder, why is he floating in the water like Jesus? First of all, I guess there are mass similarities to Superman and Jesus, but Zack Snyder loves his biblical and Jesus imagery. Man, and you know what they had to do for the scene? It was crazy. They had Henry Cavill underwater, and they had like scuba divers giving him oxygen, and so he was kind of in the water a little bit, and the explosions went off. So if he went up a few inches in the water, he would have been fricasseed. So he had to stay low. And they had these they attached these things on his fingers to hold his fingers back. It's crazy. It was an interesting scene, but I was kind of like, well, I mean, doesn't have to be there. I mean, and a whale eventually like wakes him up or helps him. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, that's Aquaman. Yep, that's Aquaman. I mean, there's nothing to allude to that it is Aquaman. I guess it could be Aquaman summoning a whale to help a homie out, or I mean, even though he didn't know him at the time, but I don't know. So after the oil rig scene, they kind of go back and forth with flashbacks about Clark growing up, which I'm kind of over at this point. I'm over most origin stories of heroes like that are that popular. I mean, I feel like most people know the story of Superman, and most people know the origin story of Spider-Man, so it's kind of unnecessary to show it, but I mean, they showed it. And this sparked a lot of outrage, especially in the trailer. There's one scene when this bus Clark's riding on, it kind of drowns, and they have to. So Clark goes and he saves everybody, and he's talking to Pa Kent, and then he's like,
"What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?"
Maybe.
What? People were upset. They're like, Pa can't tell Clark not to save anybody. What is this? Man. And I understand the outrage, but as a parent, I feel like it's a tough situation. I don't feel like there's one right or wrong way, because you want to keep your kid safe and you don't want your kid to get outed and get sent to the government and dissected for being an alien and stuff like that. So you can't fault him for wanting to be selfish in the right that he wants to save his kid, you know? And this interpretation of Martha and Jonathan Kent was a little different, because normally we were used to seeing them as grandparent figures, and now they made them a little younger and made them parental figures. Yeah, let's talk about Sweat. Dude disrespecting Clark in the bar. Oh man, that never gets old, when they be disrespecting superheroes in bars because they don't know they got powers and they can whoop their ass at any time. What? Mad dope. And I was like, oh man, Clark really kept his composure. It's come to find out, yo, he jacked up homeboy's truck. That's what you get, son. Trying to be disrespectful to women and whatnot. Oh man, this was also a little different. I'm like, oh damn, this isn't the Clark we know, what? But at the same time, he's still young. So the movie shifts perspective and we're introduced to Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams, which is also interesting, is that she was in an episode of Smallville where she's this girl who's drinking shakes or something like that, vegetable shakes, and the vegetables were mutated by kryptonite or in the dirt or something like that, and she got an eating disorder, and then she started eating crazy stuff like deer, and her mouth was opening up like Jaws, and she was eating deer. Man, that freaked me out when I was younger. She's going to investigate while Clark is trying to tunnel through with his eye beams through the ice, and I thought that was interesting because in the old movies, we always just saw the eye beams kind of used in a corny way. Clark also uses his eye beams to cauterize her wounds when she gets her ass beat by a robot. Yo, damn, she got her ass beat. Their first interaction is very important because I'm watching it, I'm thinking, wait a minute, he doesn't have his glasses on. What's going on? So I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so she's already gonna know he's Superman from jump. So I know people were upset about you can't get rid of the secret identity. You can't do that. It's just some things you don't fuck with. But man, that secret identity stuff was always foolish to me. I like that in this version, Lois Lane is the one who brings in Clark, getting him the job at the Daily Planet. Feels a little more plausible that at least she would know his true identity. But yeah, I never bought the secret identity stuff with Clark Kent specifically. I mean, granted, he was a bumbling fool, but dude was built like a linebacker. And you have people showing pictures about, look at the posture. When somebody hunches over, you can't really tell. And this and the third. And it's like, man, so like, what's the deal? He was around Lois Lane a lot. Did he wear a different cologne? What's with that, man? He just had the Jerry curl. So now, I don't know who he is because he got a Jerry curl and glasses throwing me off. Man, that don't sound right. And let me get this straight. You work in a building full of freaking reporters? Nobody can figure that out? I hope Perry White knew the whole time and was just like messing with him, because that's ridiculous. In the comic books, they try to retcon it. They were like, the glasses were Kryptonian, or made of Kryptonian technology, and they gave off this low-level telepathy to throw people off so he could project that he's Clark Kent and people wouldn't know. That is dumb. And in the iterations that we've seen, he never really changed his voice either. So it's like your voice pattern is the same, you probably smell the same, you look the same except for glasses. It's like, you know what? And I know he has the ability to change his voice because there was this episode of in the Batman animated series where Batman went missing, had something to do with aliens, long story. And Superman wore Batman's costume and was impersonating Batman, and he could mimic his voice perfectly because he had perfect hearing and he could just do things with his vocal cord. He could even mimic Robin's voice when he was a kid and stuff like that. So why wouldn't you just, I feel like throwing off your voice, even though it's still ridiculous, it will still help a little bit. At the same time, you don't want to change your voice too much and pull a Christian Bale and I'm Batman, Superman. So I guess I understand. They also changed up Perry White. They should have called him Perry Black because he's played by Lawrence Fishburne. That's right. And what? Best believe people were upset about Perry Black. Man, what's the big deal? Like, it changes the story in any way, shape, or form, y'all need to get over it. But he did a good job. I mean, he didn't really do much, but I mean, I didn't dislike him. He did really help out when he tried to help out, at least when the Daily Planet, when the destruction and all that shit was going on. So Perry Black, what's up? Yeah. The ship that was in the ice eventually became the Fortress of Solitude, and we were all married with the idea and loved the image of the big crystal fortress. But it served the purpose for the movie. I'm kind of sad they didn't really revisit it, and I really liked the fortress from the comics and other iterations where it's like he collected different animals and different things from where that he collected off-world and different technologies. I mean, he hasn't gone off-world yet, but I mean, where we are now with the universe, they still never really, they don't really expand on that. And we finally got the I am your father scene. Jor-El and Kal-El are finally reunited. By the way, what kind of janky ass security system is that for you don't push in the flash drive all the way and the security system tries to murder you? Like, shouldn't there be a countdown or something, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, something, so you can push that thing in? Yo, from jump, robots were already trying to murder him. What? Yeah, that was kind of foolish. Another thing this movie got right is a hologram technology, because we were used to seeing weird projections and stuff, and it's just like, or you would just hear, Smallville was, man, they didn't have the budget, so it was just, you just hear Jor-El's voice, just like Oz and all that. So it was kind of dumb. So, and yeah, so I like how they did it this time, because the actors really got to engage with one another. The scenes became more emotional. You really enjoy the scenes a lot more because of it. And what's also pretty cool is at certain points you actually see the hologram kind of dissipate, how it's composed, so you do know it's a hologram and stuff. So I like that, instead of straight exposition of Jor-El saying, here's what happened in your planet, and which we're all used to. I like how he showed it with as Snyder coins it, the liquid geo technology, I think. So I thought that was a fun way of showing the destruction of Krypton. That's not supposed to be fun. I also wondered in the other movies and the shows, like, why didn't Jor-El and Lara hop in the ship with him? Sometimes the ship was big enough to fit like at least one of them in there, or Jor-El could have created a bigger ship. And this one, he explains that they couldn't go because they felt responsible for the downfall of Krypton. So it was kind of like, the captain's going down with the ship. So it was a small thing, but that was a question that was bothering me for years. In the same scene, we also got the suit reveal finally. Kryptonians had 3D printers like thousands of years before we even could think about it. It's crazy. They got the lighting right. That cape, I think they used a CG cape. The cape looked right. The costume itself looked cool. I love that it's not just spandex. It was very textured and stuff. So it's plausible that, oh man, it's made out of a durable material. It could be like some sort of armor. And they also show that Jor-El had the same material he was wearing in Krypton. So it was a good seed that they planted. A lot of people were bothered by the color palette of the suit. They felt it was too dark. Didn't really bother me. Yeah, what bothered people, but what people were outraged talking about, where's his underwear? It's not underwear, it's trunks. My fault. Yo, I'm sorry to say, the underwear, the trunks over the suit is kind of outdated and not necessary. What top 3 things people were complaining about was that there was no trunks. Now, say what you want about the suit, but yo, the first time dude flies and breaks the sound barrier with the legendary composer Hans Zimmer's music in the background. What? If you didn't get chills, the first time he goes to fly, you actually see the particles around him kind of lifting. Yo, that shit was mad ill. I wish they didn't show it in the commercials. I wish we saw that for the first time in the movies. But I mean, we know he's gonna fly anyway, And I guess this was a good selling point, so people aren't like, oh, this movie's gonna be complete and utter shit and stuff like that, because I don't think anybody could complain about that, you know. And fun fact, when the first photo of the Superman suit was released by Warner Brothers, it actually was trending more than the Debt Crisis. We're gonna have to talk about that Paul Kent death scene. That shit was dumb. It made no sense. I can't even front, man. Clark's dad is trying to get the dog out the car and everything, and he's doing all he can to save people. So it's like, okay, this is telling of, you know, where Clark got his superhero personality and do right and this, that, and the third. And so the twister's going, and Pa Kent really said, don't save me, just let me whisk away, Wizard of Oz style. What? That don't make sense, man. He could have figured out something to save him. He didn't want him to get outed, so I guess he was trying to save him. But it just, like I said, I can't explain it. That was confusing, man. That was unnecessary. I agree with anybody who has beef with that. Yes, made no sense whatsoever. So we get introduced to Zod a second time. Man, this was crazy. He rolled up with that transmission, outing Cavail to the world and stuff. Man, I guess and it was transmitted in about what, like 2,000 different languages. That just show how primitive we are. A fun scene is the fact that when Clark doesn't know what to do, he actually goes to a priest to ask for advice. And I thought it made sense. Yeah, a small town like that in Kansas, yeah, they'd probably be Christian or something like that. So it makes sense. So it was very like it was such a contradiction, because dude is pretty much a god himself, but it was a good scene. So Superman decides to turn himself into the general, who I'm quite certain is going to be John Johns. So we'll see that in the Snyder cut. And yeah, so they take him in, and he actually puts on the cuffs. I mean, I don't know, man. Even when I saw the trailer, I'm like, man, he could rip those apart like tinfoil. But I guess he wanted to wear the cuffs in good faith. But I'm like, man, he could whoop all your asses. So they interrogate him. I don't know why Lois was the one who did the interrogate. Well, they met before, so I guess it makes sense. And I love the scene where she's like, oh.
What's the S stand for?
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
Well, here it's an S. How about
And I really like that scene, because I think it also shows that you're not Superman until you earn it with all the Earthlings. That's what I took from that scene. So I really enjoyed it. And what are the odds that a S just happens to mean hope in there? I mean, it's not an S exactly, but S looking hieroglyphic just happens to mean hope. And Clark really puts his faith in Lois Lane early on and gives her the dope flash drive with Jor-El's AI, which is probably my favorite scene when they're up in the ship together. Who would have thought that one of the best scenes would be between Lois Lane and Jor-El? Like, that's never been done before. You know, Jor-El's guiding her through the ship, and it's crazy because she'd be running through a corridor, and then you see Jor-El again, and I'm like, how did they do that? It doesn't quite look like green screen, and it doesn't quite look like CG either. Anyway, it was very well done on the filmmakers' parts. While all that was going on, and Lois and Jor-El were trying to figure out how to save Clark. Clark was in the ship already, and Zod was incepting him with some Kryptonian technology, and there was this weird dream sequence where he had a black suit. Yo, that black suit looks so dope, man. I wanted to see it, and it was supposed to be in Justice League, but somebody removed it, man. But we'll see it eventually in the Snyder Cut. It's best believe there will be an episode about that. Also, I love how when Jor-El told Kal-El to break the panel in the ship so he could escape, it broke perfectly so he could escape. It's like, man, how that was convenient. That looked a little too dope and convenient. Man, you just knew how much pressure he would use to hit the panel so it would open up all beautiful like and whatnot. All right, okay, sure. Back to Zod, the disrespectful mofo that he is. He really put a truck through Martha's house. What, you disrespectful mofo. Oh, yeah, Clark picked him up and threw him. I don't know, he threw him into a power plant? That looked mad dangerous. I don't know what he was thinking doing. I mean, he's new, so let's, I mean, I would hope he knows that, I guess, people weren't working there. Maybe it was a Sunday, you know, people were worshiping Jesus, so there were no bystanders. But yeah, that was a little too reckless. Clark. I'm not gonna front. The other Kryptonians, like Fiora, they jacked Clark up, grabbing him by his cape and so, what a disrespect. And iHeart, all that product placement, whatever. Also, that was kind of crazy. You actually see Pete is working at the IHOP now, and it's on some savage stuff. The military, they were like, you know what, just shoot all the aliens. They're all the same. It's, man, jacked up. It wasn't until that general got the beat down. He thought his life was done, and Clark saved him. He's like, oh, you know what? Now I remember that Clark's good. Now I remember. I mean, Superman's good now. Yeah. It's, man, shaking my head. Back to the Kryptonian technology, that terraforming machine was crazy. And it makes sense that it would have a defense system, because I'm sure people probably wouldn't want Kryptonians to just start terraforming their shit while they're still there, and they might try to do something about it. So it makes sense that it would have a defense mechanism. And what was also cool is you could tell it was the same liquid geo technology that we saw on the ship with when Jor-El was explaining the history of what happened to Krypton. And I also don't like that they had to use his spaceship to send the Kryptonians back through the wormhole. And it was like, it's also unnecessary that he had to destroy his ship. It's just like, damn, you're just everything that you had left of your culture. Like, you know, I'm not saying you have to roll with Kryptonians, but you should save your stuff. Like, you know, like in all the other iterations, he kept his ship, he kept everything. You know, the Fortress of Solitude was like a museum of all this stuff. So I didn't really think that was necessary. And all this stuff is happening, y'all aren't even sure that Zod is dead, and y'all be kissing? What's with people kissing in apocalyptic type situations? Snyder loves doing it. People kissing and there's explosions going on in the background. Like, yo, make sure it's safe, dude. Make sure it's safe. That's why he tried to jump you afterwards and stuff. Man. In that final scene, Zod explains,
I exist only to protect Krypton. That is the sole purpose for which I was born. And every action I take, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the greater good of my people. And now, I have no people. My soul. That is what you...
And in many ways, I think he resents Kal-El because Kal-El isn't a slave to that and represents everything that he isn't. So that's another reason he probably hated him. So I thought that was quite insightful. Okay, now we got to talk about probably the most controversial decision in the film, which was to kill Zod. Yeah, I mean, what is there to say? I mean, he killed him. Dude straight up was like,
Never.
what are you supposed to do, man? And it's not like Superman killed him in cold blood. He really didn't want to. I-beams were on the family, which was a little convenient. People were like, oh man, they could have just escaped and this and the other thing. It didn't look like they had a escape route, but I mean, I guess it's possible. But also, when people are in danger, they act real stupid. Have you ever walked on the street and you saw a car coming and you just stop like you're in deer in headlights and stuff like that? So I think that was a similar thing. I mean, that being said, I don't think the death was really an issue because he said he would never stop. He would do whatever it takes. And they're like, well, Superman would be able to figure out a way to save everybody and not kill him. And somebody. This is not that iteration. Also, he's also younger. He's not a well-established Superman. The decisions he makes early on probably won't be the best decisions, or some things he might regret, or there might not be any right answer. So I feel I didn't feel it was an issue for me personally. Also, are we just going to ignore that in Superman 2, Superman just picks up Zod and drops him in the Fortress of Solitude when he's a human? What? Get out of here. Yeah, people are going to say, well, there's a deleted scene where they say that they survived and they put them in an ambulance and sent them to jail or something like that. Deleted for a reason. So I feel like people want to pick and choose when it's okay for people to kill. Also, people are like, Batman doesn't kill. Yeah, rewatch the Tim Burton Batman movies again and then get back to me. But we ain't talking about Batman today. People are also complaining about the property damage. Like, yo, he didn't give a fuck about Metropolis. He was just going through buildings left and right. He wasn't just going through buildings. He had an alien who was just as strong as him, if not more strong, throwing him through buildings. A lot of these things are what irritated people and said, oh man, this is too dark. Zack Snyder's too dark. This movie's too dark. And I would argue that I feel like it's okay that the first movie is dark because you need to be able to... How is Superman going to be a symbol of hope if shit is hopeful from jump? I feel like you need to instill that hope by making everything hopeless. So now that things are dark in the sequels, the movies could be lighter in tone. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. The sequels stayed pretty dark, so I would also argue that super hopeful campiness, it doesn't work the same way it does now. I don't think that aged well. So I think as long as things aren't like gruesome or grotesque, it's okay for things to be a little dark. I personally didn't think the movie was so dark that it wasn't Superman. It just felt like another iteration or another version of Superman to me. But me and certain people clearly disagree on that. Some Easter eggs, we see Carol Ferris getting that whap when Superman flies away. By the way, when the general gets mad at Superman for destroying that drone who was creeping up on him, that was cool. But why would Superman go,
I grew up in Kansas, General. About as American as it gets.
So you just gave the location of where you grew up so we can send a drone to your mom's house and figure out who you are. We also saw the LexCorp truck and the Wayne Tech satellite. So the Wayne Tech satellite would clearly set up, Batman. I don't think they knew they were going to make Batman versus Superman. I think the idea was to make Man of Steel 2, and they kind of just hijacked it when they got scared because Marvel was like raking in the dough and stuff. And I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of disappointed. I would have rather they have just, like I said, you have your own shared universe series instead of hijacking Man of Steel, because instead of having a movie solely devoted to Lex Luthor, he's all up in Batman vs. Superman. I wanted to see him finally. I want to see a proper Brainiac, not a one fighting polar bears and all that crazy stuff. So that was kind of a disappointment. So to sum things up, I think Man of Steel is a solid movie. It's not perfect, but I thought it was a great introduction to a contemporary Superman and the DC cinematic universe. All right, guys, that's a wrap. It's your boy, the Infinity Blerd, your friendly neighborhood nerd and movie buff. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more superhero movie reviews and more DC cinematic universe movie reviews. So next up, you will be seeing Batman versus Superman. It's about to go down.